The moment you stop apologizing for your intensity is the moment you become dangerous, dangerous to mediocrity, dangerous to complacency, dangerous to systems that profit from your self-doubt. This is precisely why you've been conditioned to view your natural enthusiasm as problematic, your righteous anger as inappropriate, your ambition as selfish, and your standards as unrealistic. The truth is blindingly simple yet revolutionary. The people who find you too much are actually revealing how little they've demanded from their own lives. Their discomfort in your presence isn't evidence that you should reduce your voltage. It's confirmation that your authenticity is powerful enough to disrupt their carefully constructed illusions. What if the greatest service you could offer humanity isn't your restraint, but your full, unapologetic expression? They told you to dim your light. They suggested you speak a little softer, dream a little smaller, and take up less space in the world. And perhaps the most painful part, you listened. You've been turning down your volume, shrinking yourself to fit into boxes never meant to contain you. But what if that discomfort others feel around your intensity isn't about you being too much? What if their discomfort is actually the precise indication that you're finally becoming exactly who you were always meant to be? There stands before us raw and unfiltered, so your intensity scares the right people. And today, we're going to explore why that might be the most liberating realization of your life. The most authentic version of you, that version burning with passion, unwilling to compromise on what matters and fiercely committed to living with integrity, naturally creates friction with those who have settled for mediocrity in their own lives. Your fire illuminates the choices they've avoided making. Your courage highlights the risks they've been too afraid to take. And that's not your burden to carry. When I look into this room, I don't see ordinary people. I see infinite potential wrapped in human form. I see the universe expressing itself through you in ways that have never existed before and will never exist again. The question isn't whether you have greatness within you. The question is whether you'll finally grant yourself permission to express it. Have you ever noticed how children live with complete intensity? They laugh until they can barely breathe. They cry with their entire bodies. They love unconditionally and express their truth without hesitation. No child ever says, perhaps I should tone down my excitement so others feel more comfortable. Yet somewhere along the way, we internalize the message that our fullest expression was somehow inappropriate. Who taught you to be smaller? Who convinced you that your natural state needed correction? And most importantly, are you ready to unlearn those? The path to your highest expression begins with a simple but profound understanding. The world doesn't need another diluted version of someone else. The world needs your unique medicine, the gifts, insights, and energy that only you can offer in precisely the way you offer them. Your intensity isn't something to manage or overcome. It's the exact thing the world has been waiting for. When you speak your truth without apology, you give others permission to do the same. When you pursue your deepest calling, despite uncertainty, you create a path for others to follow. When you refuse to dim your light, so many of us waste precious energy trying to calibrate ourselves to make others comfortable. We read the room and adjust accordingly, believing that our acceptance depends on our ability to adapt. But what if the greatest gift you could offer humanity isn't your adaptation, but your authenticity? I recently encountered a woman who spent 30 years of her life trying to speak softly, dress conservatively, and minimize her naturally exuberant personality because her former partner found it embarrassing. Too loud, he would whisper when she laughed heartily at a restaurant. Too much, he would mutter when she expressed passionate opinions at social gatherings. For 3 decades, she constructed a cage around her spirit, believing that her natural expression was somehow flawed. Then one day, after her relationship ended, she decided to experiment with being fully herself. She laughed when she felt like laughing. She spoke with the passion she naturally felt. She wore colors that made her heart sing rather than colors that blended into the background. Some people in her life became uncomfortable. Some relationships fell away. But for every person who stepped back, 3 steps forward, drawn to the authenticity they sensed in her presence. I feel more myself around you, they would tell her. You give me permission to be real. Her willingness to exist at her natural frequency created a resonance that attracted her true community. The discomfort she generated in others wasn't a sign she was doing something wrong. It was evidence she was finally doing something right. What would your life look like if you stopped apologizing for your intensity? What would change if you viewed your passion not as something to contain, but as your greatest offering? The people meant to journey with you will never ask you to be less than you are. They'll never request that you soften your edges or moderate your enthusiasm. They'll never make you feel that your natural expression is somehow inappropriate or excessive. The right people in your life will stand in your fire and find themselves warmed, not burned. Everything significant ever accomplished in human history came from intensity. No half-hearted commitment ever changed the world. No lukewarm passion ever inspired a movement. No moderate conviction ever transformed a life. Intensity is the fuel of transformation, both personal and collective. When you allow yourself to care deeply, to show up fully, to pursue your vision with unwavering commitment, you access a power that casual involvement can never. Yet we live in a culture that celebrates moderation in all things. Don't get too excited, we're told. Don't invest too much of yourself, we're warned. Keep your options open, we're advised, as if holding back pieces of ourselves somehow protects us from disappointment or failure. But what if that very hesitation is the source of our deepest disappointments? What if our unwillingness to fully commit to our dreams, to our relationships, to our highest vision ensures that we never experience the depth of fulfillment our souls crave? Half living produces half results. And no one reaches the end of their life wishing they had been less authentic, less passionate, or less true to themselves. I want you to take a moment right now. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Bring to mind a time when you expressed yourself with complete freedom, a moment when you weren't monitoring others' reactions or censoring your natural enthusiasm. Remember how that felt in your body. The expansiveness, the aliveness, the sense of alignment. That feeling wasn't an aberration. It wasn't inappropriate or excessive. That feeling was your birthright, the natural state of a human being fully aligned with their truth. Now bring to mind a time when you dimmed your light to make others comfortable. Remember how that felt in your body, the contraction, the heaviness, the subtle but persistent sense that you were betraying something essential within yourself. Which feeling do you want to build your life around? The irony is that when we finally release the exhausting effort of being less than we are, we discover an energy we never knew we possessed. The energy we previously invested in self-monitoring and self-containment becomes available for creation, connection, and contribution. Your intensity, your willingness to care deeply, to speak honestly, to show up fully isn't something to apologize for. It's the exact medicine a world of half-living people desperately needs. I've observed a pattern across decades of working with people committed to personal transformation. Those who make the most profound changes share one essential quality: they're willing to get intensely honest with themselves. They're willing to look unflinchingly at their patterns, to acknowledge their self-deception, and to take full responsibility for their lives. This level of radical honesty initially feels intensely uncomfortable, but both for the person embodying it and often for those around them. But this discomfort isn't a warning sign. It's a necessary stage in the evolution of consciousness. Growth rarely happens in comfortable spaces. Transformation rarely occurs within the boundaries of what feels familiar. The very discomfort you feel when standing in your truth is evidence you're expanding beyond old limitation. When your authentic self-expression creates discomfort in others, that discomfort belongs to them, not to you. Their reaction reflects their relationship with themselves, not your appropriateness or worth. This understanding doesn't give us license to be unkind or inconsiderate, but it does free us from the impossible task of trying to manage other people's emotional responses to our authentic expression. You cannot live your life in reaction to others' reactions without losing yourself entirely. The people who find your intensity threatening or uncomfortable are often struggling with their own unacknowledged truths. Your willingness to speak honestly highlights the compromises they've made with themselves. Your courage to pursue your deepest calling illuminates the dreams, they've abandoned. Your refusal to settle shines a light on where they've chosen comfort over growth. Their discomfort isn't your responsibility to fix. It's their invitation to examine their own choices. This realization doesn't just free you from the burden of managing others' responses. It allows you to see those responses with compassion. When someone reacts negatively to your authentic expression, they're revealing their own wounding, their own fears, their own unresolved relationship with power and truth. Rather than taking their reaction personally, you can recognize it as an expression of their inner landscape. This perspective allows you to maintain your center even when facing resistance or rejection. The question isn't whether your authenticity will create discomfort in others. It will. The question is how you'll respond to that discomfort. Will you retreat back into smallness? Or will you stand firmly in your truth while extending compassion to those who aren't ready to receive it? True confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the willingness to move forward even when doubt is present. Similarly, true authenticity isn't the absence of fear about how others might respond. It's the willingness to express yourself honestly even when that fear arises. Every time you choose authentic expression over people-pleasing, you strengthen the connection to your inner guidance. Every time you honor your truth despite external pressure to conform, you reclaim a piece of your personal power. Every time you allow yourself to be fully seen, even when it feels vulnerable, you heal the part of you that believed your natural state wasn't acceptable. This journey toward authentic expression isn't always linear. There will be days when old patterns resurface. There will be situations where you find yourself automatically dimming your light. This doesn't represent failure. It simply highlights areas still in need of healing and integration. The path isn't about achieving perfect authenticity in every moment. It's about developing the awareness to recognize when you're contracting and the courage to choose expansion instead. I want to address an important distinction. Authentic intensity isn't the same as unregulated emotional reactivity. It's not about expressing every passing feeling without discernment. True authenticity comes from a centered place of self-awareness rather than a triggered place of emotional wounding. The intensity I'm advocating isn't about being loud for the sake of being noticed or controversial for the sake of provoking reaction. It's about being truthful about what matters to you, passionate about your purpose, and unwavering in your commitment to living. Sometimes authentic expression is quiet yet powerful. Sometimes it's about listening deeply rather than speaking boldly. Sometimes it's about setting a boundary with gentle firmness rather than dramatic declaration. The key distinction lies in the place from which your expression originates. Does it come from your deepest truth or from your unhealed wounds? Does it emerge from clarity or reactivity? Does it seek to contribute or merely to be validated? When your intensity emerges from your authentic center rather than your unexamined triggers, it carries a quality that others can feel, even when they don't agree with your perspective. There's a coherence to it, an alignment that communicates integrity even across differences of opinion. This type of centered intensity doesn't drain you, it energizes you. It doesn't require you to override your body signals or push beyond your true capacity. Instead, it flows naturally when you remove the internal barriers to your authentic experience. Most of us have erected these barriers for understandable reasons. Perhaps you learned early that certain emotions weren't acceptable in your family system. Perhaps you experienced rejection when expressing your genuine thoughts or feelings. Perhaps you discovered that adapting to others' expectations earned you the approval you desperately needed. These adaptations may have been necessary for your emotional survival at one point, but now they're limiting your capacity to live with the freedom and impact you're capable of creating. The unlearning of these patterns happens gradually through consistent practice and gentle persistence. Each time you notice yourself holding back, what am I afraid would happen if I express my truth right now? What old belief is being activated? What past experience am I still organizing my life around? These questions help you distinguish between wisdom-based discernment, knowing when, where, and how to express your truth, and fear-based suppression, writing your truth because of anticipated negative consequences. As you develop this discernment, you'll discover a paradoxical truth. Authentic expression requires both courage and vulnerability. The courage to stand in your truth regardless of how others respond, and the vulnerability to be genuinely affected by life rather than armored against it. Many of us confuse intensity with a kind of invulnerability, as if being powerful means being impervious to hurt or disappointment. But true intensity includes the willingness to feel everything life brings, to remain open even when that openness means experiencing pain alongside joy. The most powerful people aren't those who feel less. They're those who feel fully while maintaining their center. They don't use their intensity as a shield against vulnerability. They understand that their capacity to impact others is directly proportional to their willingness to be impacted. This integration of power and openness, of conviction and receptivity, creates a presence that naturally commands respect, not because it demands attention, but because it embodies integrity. When you speak from this integrated place, people listen differently. When you act from this alignment, your impact multiplies. When you live from this wholeness, your very presence becomes an invitation for others to discover their own authentic expression. This is how individual transformation catalyzes collective change, not through persuasive arguments or forceful demands, but through the undeniable power of congruent. I've witnessed rooms full of people shift their perspective, not because they were convinced by logical reasoning, but because they sensed the embodied truth in someone who refused to be less than they were. I've seen organizations transform their culture not through policy changes, but through the ripple effect created when even one person begins speaking their unvarnished truth with compassion. Your willingness to live with authentic intensity creates a field of possibility around you. It silently communicates to others. This is available to you too. Of course, not everyone will welcome this invitation. Some will actively resist it, sensing that accepting it would require them to question the compromise-filled life they've constructed. Their resistance isn't personal, it's existential. Your authentic expression represents a threat to their carefully maintained equilibrium. Understanding this allows you to respond to resistance with compassion rather than defensiveness. You can recognize that their reaction has little to do with you and everything to do with their own relationship with truth, power, and possibility. This understanding doesn't make the resistance disappear, but it does transform how you experience it. Instead of being diminished by others' negative responses, you can see them as confirmation that you're no longer participating in collective pretense. You're no longer reinforcing the unspoken agreement to live at half capacity in order to maintain everyone's comfort. Breaking this agreement isn't comfortable for you or for those around you. But comfort has never been the path to transformation. Comfort has never been the soil in which our greatest contributions take root. The world doesn't need more comfortable people. It needs more fully alive people. People willing to feel deeply, speak honestly, and act with unwavering commitment to what matters most. This willingness requires courage. Not the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward despite it. Every person who has ever made a meaningful difference has felt afraid. The difference isn't in whether they experienced fear, but in whether they allowed fear to determine their choices. Your intensity naturally generates fear, both within yourself and in others. When you express your truth without dilution, when you pursue your vision without apology, when you stand firmly in your power, without minimizing it to make others comfortable, you activate ancient survival fears around rejection and abandonment. These fears will tell you that your authentic expression is dangerous, that it will lead to isolation and exclusion. And there's a partial truth here. Your authenticity will indeed lead to the falling away of relationships built on mutual pretense. It will indeed disrupt dynamics dependent on your self-suppression. But what these fears don't tell you is what awaits on the other side of this necessary dissolution. They don't show you the deeper connections that become possible when you stop performing and start being. They don't reveal the profound sense of homecoming that accompanies full self-expression. They don't illuminate the communities of fellow truth-tellers waiting to welcome you. Your intensity will indeed scare some people away, but it will also attract those who have been waiting for someone like you, someone unafraid to live with wholehearted commitment, someone unwilling to dilute their truth to gain approval, someone whose authentic presence gives others permission to The right people aren't scared away by your intensity. They're drawn to it like moths to flame. I remember working with a brilliant artist who had spent decades creating work she didn't truly believe in. Work that sold well but didn't express her deepest vision. She came to me in crisis, feeling successful by external standards yet profoundly empty inside. "I don't know if I have the courage to make the work I really want to make," she told me. "It's so different from what my collectors expect. What if no one responds to it? What if I lose everything I built?" These were legitimate concerns. Art market can be unforgiving of radical departures. But the greater risk, as we explored together, was continuing to live in misalignment with her creative truth. The cost of that misalignment was already evident at her diminishing vitality, her increasing health challenges, and her sense of spiritual desolation. With tremendous courage, she began creating work that expressed her unfiltered vision, work that was indeed radically different from her previous pieces. As she feared, many of her existing collectors responded with confusion or disappointment. Some galleries declined to show the new work. Her income temporarily decreased. But something else happened simultaneously. A different audience began discovering her art. People who were profoundly moved by the raw authenticity they sensed in these new creations. Other artists reached out, inspired by her courage to evolve. Galleries with different sensibilities expressed interest. Most significantly, her entire being seemed to light up from within. The headaches that had plagued her for years diminished. The chronic fatigue she'd attributed to age lifted. She reported feeling like myself for the first time in decades. This artist's story illustrates a universal principle. When you align with your authentic expression, you may initially experience external turbulence, but you simultaneously activate an internal coherence that generates unexpected support. The universe responds differently to a person living in alignment than to a person living in compromise. Doors open that you couldn't have anticipated. Synchronicities multiply. Resources appear that weren't previously available. Not because of some magical thinking, but because you're finally accessing the energy that compromise had previously blocked your intensity. When it emerges from authentic alignment rather than egoic striving, acts as a tuning fork, attracting experiences, relationships, and opportunities that match your genuine frequency. This doesn't mean the path becomes effortless. Authentic living often requires more effort, not less. The effort of staying awake when it would be easier to fall back asleep, the effort of speaking truth when silence would avoid conflict, the effort of pursuing excellence when mediocrity would suffice. But this effort feels fundamentally different from the exhausting work of self-suppression. It energizes rather than depletes. It expands rather than contracts. It connects you to something larger than yourself rather than isolating you within your fears. As you practice living with authentic intensity, you'll notice a gradual shift in how you experience challenges. What once felt like obstacles to overcome increasingly appears as opportunities for deeper integration. What once triggered reactive defenses increasingly invites creative response. This shift represents a fundamental reorientation in how you relate to difficulty. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid discomfort?" you begin asking, "What is this discomfort trying to teach me? How is this challenging situation inviting me into greater wholeness?" The paradox of authentic intensity is that it simultaneously requires absolute commitment and complete surrender. Commitment to living your truth regardless of external validation, and surrender to the mystery of how that truth will. Many people struggle with this paradox, believing they must choose between powerful agency and humble receptivity. But the most transformative presence emerges from their integration, from the ability to act decisively while remaining open to guidance beyond your individual perspective. This integration doesn't happen through intellectual understanding alone. It happens through consistent practice, through the daily choice to express your truth while remaining receptive to feedback, to pursue your vision while staying open to unexpected redirection, to stand firmly in your power while acknowledging your fundamental interdependence with all of life. As this integration deepens, your intensity naturally matures. It becomes less about forcing your will upon the world and more about allowing a larger intelligence to express itself through you. Less about achieving external markers of success and more about fulfilling your unique contribution. Less about being seen and recognized and more about seeing and recognizing the sacred in everything around. This mature intensity carries a quality of presence that cannot be fabricated or performed. It emerges organically from the congruence between your inner experience and outer expression, between your deepest values and daily choices, between your spiritual understanding and practical actions. Such congruence isn't achieved through perfectionism or rigid adherence to external standards. It's cultivated through radical honesty with yourself, through the willingness to acknowledge when you've fallen into old patterns, and through the compassion to begin again without self-judgment. The path of authentic intensity isn't about reaching some idealized state of enlightened expression. It's about bringing increasing awareness to each moment, each interaction, each choice, gradually aligning more aspects of your life with your deepest truth. This alignment doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds through thousands of small choices, choices that might seem insignificant in isolation, but collectively determine the quality of your presence and the impact of your life. Will you speak the truth in this conversation, even when silence would be easier? Will you pursue excellence in this task, even when no one would notice mediocrity? Will you honor your body's wisdom, even when pushing beyond its limits might earn external approval? Will you acknowledge your impact on others, even when it would be more comfortable to remain oblivious? Each yes to these questions strengthens your capacity for authentic expression. Each act of alignment builds your integrity muscle. Each moment of congruence between inner truth and outer action increases your energetic coherence. This coherence is palpable to others, even when they can't articulate what they're sensing. They feel the difference between performance and presence, between strategic communication and authentic expression, between manufactured intensity and natural aliveness. The world is hungry for this quality of presence, for people unwilling to dilute their truth or diminish their passion simply to maintain comfortable illusions. The greatest gift you can offer is your willingness to be fully yourself, to care deeply about what matters to you, and to pursue your unique calling with unwavering commitment. Your intensity will indeed scare some people. It will disrupt some relationships. It will challenge some comfortable assumptions, but it will also inspire those ready for greater authenticity in their own lives. It will attract those longing for deeper connection. It will catalyze those standing at the threshold of their own transformation. The question isn't whether you're too much. The question is whether you're finally enough of who you truly are. So I invite you right now to make a fundamental choice about how you'll live the rest of your life. Will you continue adapting to others' expectations, carefully managing their comfort at the expense of your authentic expression? Or will you commit to bringing more of your unfiltered truth, your undiminished passion, and your unapologetic power into every aspect of your life? This choice doesn't require grand declarations or dramatic actions. It begins with small moments of honesty, with allowing yourself to feel what you actually feel, to know what you actually know, and to express what genuinely matters to you. It continues through consistent practice, through the willingness to notice when you're contracting in fear and to choose expansion instead, to recognize when you're speaking to please others and to realign with your truth, to observe when you're holding back your natural enthusiasm and to release it fully. And it deepens through community, through relationships with others committed to authentic living, through conversations that go beyond surface pleasantries, through environments that value truth over comfort and growth over stasis. Your intensity isn't a problem to solve. It's a gift to embody, not just for your own fulfillment, but for a world desperately in need of people unwilling to settle for less than the full expression of their unique medicine. Yes, your intensity will scare people. Let it scare the right ones. Those whose discomfort reveals their own unlived potential. Those whose resistance highlights their own unacknowledged truth. Those whose criticism masks their own unfaced fears, and let it attract the right ones too. those who recognize your authenticity as an invitation to their own, those who feel more themselves in your presence, those who want to build a world where full-spectrum humanity is welcome rather than contained. The most powerful choice you can make isn't about what you'll achieve or acquire. It's about who you'll be in each moment, how fully you'll show up, how honestly you'll express yourself, how completely you'll embody your unique gifts. Choose intensity, choose authenticity, choose the path that scares the right people. Not out of rebellion or defiance, but out of profound respect for the life force seeking expression through you. The world doesn't need your careful, calculated, cautious self. It needs your wild, wise, wonderful self. The self that cares too much, feels too deeply, and loves too completely to be contained by others' expectations. Your intensity isn't too much. It's exactly enough. Exactly what's needed in a world crying out for people brave enough to live with their whole hearts open, their full voices expressed, and their complete spirits engaged. So shine, dear one. Shine with such brilliance that those afraid of their own light must either turn away or learn to ignite their own flame. Speak with such conviction that those disconnected from their own truth must either cover their ears or begin listening to their inner voice. Live with such authentic power that those who have forgotten their own must either retreat or reclaim it. Your intensity will indeed scare the right people. Let it, and watch what happens when you finally grant yourself permission to be the force of nature. You've always been beneath the careful composure and measured responses, beneath the masks you've worn and the roles you've played. Watch what emerges when you stop asking, am I too much? And start asking, what does my authentic expression make possible in the world? Watch what unfolds when you release the exhausting effort of being less than you are and redirect that energy toward bringing your unique gifts into a world that has been waiting for exactly what only you can offer. Your intensity is the answer to a question the universe has been asking since the beginning of time. Don't let anyone convince you to offer a whisper when your soul came here to sing.